So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take off our headphones. It doesn't matter. And so we've got this weekly stream. Uh, okay, so we've got this weekly stream there where we're kind of bogarting the mega booth for an hour, a power hour of God knows what. They'll kick us off eventually. So we're in Double Fine right now. There's a bunch of indies in this room that kind of squat there. There was this thing called the Omega Jam. Thank you, sir. We've got a cinematographer now. There was an Omega Jam. That's Brad. That's Lexi. That's Pietro. And then Randy's over here. And then there's like a ton of super famous indies like right over here, but we're not going to even show you. So what we're going to do is I'll probably try to do at the beginning of each one of them, grab one of these guys and sort of maybe semi-interview them just because I figured it will annoy everyone in the room. And that's kind of what I do. So we have Randy. Hi, Randy.
Hey.
Randy.
What's up?
What did you do in your life? I'm in 2 sentences.
I made oatmeal this morning.
That's a good start.
It was strawberries and cream oatmeal.
Right.
And I had a nectarine. It was really good.
All right, that's your 2 sentences. You're done.
Shoot. Am I allowed to curse on this stream?
Uh,
What is Mega Booth?
The fuck
What
if
is
I
the
know.
Oh, okay. All right.
I don't know, actually.
Okay.
We'll get in trouble with Chris and Kelly later.
Yeah. I was the artist on Escape Goat 2, and yeah, I was also the lead artist on Waking Mars, and then I make a bunch of little iPhone games that no one buys, and I make no money. So, yeah.
Like the rest of us.
Like the rest.
You wouldn't be indie if you made money, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
We'd kick you out. Or actually, you'd have like really nice digs somewhere. So yeah, this is kind of an experiment. So I did this before when we were streaming at the Omega Jam with Alex and Justin. And basically, one thing that kind of worked, it was really weird, but I downloaded like these 5 questions that were these like classic questions from like interviews with like new candidates for a job. Right?
Okay. All
And
right.
as dumb as it sounded, we thought we were kind of just taking a piss. We thought it would be really funny. And
Yeah.
actually, some of them, when you're out of the context of like interviewing for a job,
Yeah.
they actually kind of work. So I'd like to try some of them.
Okay.
So I don't remember any of them.
That is the worst start to the interview. Yeah.
But
See, I
remember
had a
one of them.
topic.
I remember one of them. Okay,
So-
we'll get you your topic after I get my one question in that I can remember. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh God.
Oh man.
Homeless.
But like,
homeless
this is interesting.
a
The reason this is an
legitimate-
interesting question is because like our lives as indies are so kind of like chaotic, and all we can look at is like, I'm gonna get this game out like hopefully in the next 6 months, or else I'm gonna be out of money or whatever, right?
I
You got a
had
lot of
this
things going on.
discussion actually last night with my girlfriend because I was saying that life is very uncertain right now
Right.
because I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years. So, like, you know, a large part of our lives is our family and our significant others, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, a lot of those things definitely inform it. And she is getting her PhD from UC Berkeley very soon, and there's a small chance we might move to Germany for a postdoc, and I would be an indie in Germany.
You'd have to
and
make board games.
I'd have to make board games. But that was the thing we were talking about is, you know, like here, if I'm here in 5 years, I could in theory be in the industry, like back in like, you know, at a professional, like a bigger company. But I think I'm probably just going to continue to be indie. I'm really, I can't do anything but this.
Right.
Like the more I do and work on my own stuff, the more I don't want to do anything else.
Yeah, the more
So-
I discuss this with people, the more I realize we're all like have
Messed
traits
up.
of like addiction,
Yeah.
right? You're just like, well, I could do this, that, and the other thing, but I'm probably just gonna be doing this.
Well, and it's like, you know, when you look at like writers from the early 20th century or something like that, that was like their passion. You know, that was what consumed them. They spent years working on a novel, and then that was done. They had more ideas, and you know, for
Right.
me, I have just like I have more ideas than I will ever be able to create, and as long as I can continue to sustain myself in other formats, like I'm gonna keep making games. Like
Right.
I just like design. I just like art. I enjoy the act of creation, and I'm now at the point where I'm actually making money. You know, and like it's constantly wavering whether it's enough money, but
Right.
I'm gonna make games.
Right.
I'm gonna be making games probably as an indie, whether or not it's by myself or with a team. I'll be
Right.
making games in 5 years.
Yeah, I feel it's like if you've been doing it for a little while,
Unless everything collapses,
Right.
society
Yeah.
collapses. So
but if you've been making games for a little while, I feel that like you've already like smashed your head into that brick wall enough times that you've got like a nice callus right here. So it's like I feel like it would be rare for someone that had been doing it for a while like you have to then be like, all right, like that was too much, you know, like because it's like you've already passed that pain threshold where it's just a dull roar in the back of your mind.
well, and the really interesting thing though is the game industry is not old, and I mean that in the terms of the number of like, you know, the mean age or the average age or whatever of a game designer is mid-30s or something. Even though the game industry has been around for now 30 years, you know, the people that are
Right.
starting it, a lot of people didn't finish in the game industry.
Right.
You know, like,
It's tough.
But-
It's tough on families. It's tough on your personal life.
but I think if you're the person that goes indie, it's because it means more to you than, you know, the average develop. The thing, there's a really weird thing. So before I was in the industry, I was like, how the hell do I get into the game industry? I was like, this seems impossible because you read, you know, things like Blizzard. It's like you need minimum of 3 years experience, and they put that down there
Right, yeah.
as the requirement. And you're like, how do I get the minimum experience if I can't get hired to get experience?
Right.
And then you're in the industry, and like when I finally got into it, you know, I did internships for very cheap. I, you know, was doing work for free. I was doing, you know, just all these little things, and then finally got into a real company, whatever that means. And like half the people there, I'm like, these people don't care about this. How did they get into that job?
Right. And why?
And why? And so I think it's really weird because it's ultimately like every other industry.
Right.
The game industry is like every other field of, you know, whether you're in pharmaceuticals or whether you're in, I don't know,
You've heard it here. The
construction.
game industry is like the pharmaceutical industry.
Yes, that is what I'm comparing it to.
Real quick, you guys. Number one, if the volume level is good or not, let me know. Number two, if you guys have questions for Randy, then if you guys
I should tell people,
type them in.
if you are into level design at all, yesterday we just announced for Scapegoat 2, we are running a contest, a level design contest for the next 3 weeks, I think until Monday the 17th of August. And every winner and runner-up, there are 10 total posters that will be sending to people, and it'll be signed by me, Ian, Caitlin, one of our programmers, and Tim Schafer. So he's agreed to sign a few posters for us and design a cool puzzle level, design a cool platforming level. The one I'm really, you need the Steam version of Scapegoat 2, but the level editor is there, and the one I'm really excited to see is one of the categories is the best 4x4. So you have to you can crunch down the levels, and so you can crunch it down to the smallest possible level is 4x4 tiles.
How many
And
tiles does the goat take up?
One.
One.
So the
Oh,
goat
okay.
is
He's
is
exactly one by one.
He's actually slightly bigger, so if you look at him, he'll like in certain poses, his
Right.
horns will go up above.
But his collision is one by one.
His collision is slightly smaller as well. It's,
Okay.
But he is about a tile size.
Right.
And
So 4x4 goats.
yeah, so you have
Just all
there
the
are
goats.
16.
Can you
you
have
can
more
have
than one goat?
16 tiles. So at any one time, you, the player, are essentially taking up a 16th of the map for the 4x4. So I really am interested to see what 4x4 people design. Like, because
That's
you
cool.
you could remove all the border walls, and you know, maybe there's one tile, there's a razor blade, you know, like a saw over here and a reaper, or it's just one you know, it's all a chain system. So I'm really interested
That's
to
cool.
see
Yeah.
what might happen. So that's going on. Go to scapegoat2.com/contest. That's what I've been spending a surprising. It's really tiring to write things for the internet. I was writing like the contest rules, and then I discovered
Oh.
that it's really difficult to have international contests. I don't know, like Ian.
Because you guys have to
Ian
worry about shipping.
well, not even shipping, but there's like, if you have a contest, I hope this is interesting to you. This is probably not interesting to any of you, but I enjoy this.
I don't
kind
know. There's
of,
more people than when we started. We must
I
be
enjoy
doing
this
well.
kind of conversation. So Ian is intelligent. I am not as intelligent, and I was like, let's have a contest.
Or maybe
and
you're
then-
more because you're just
and I
like
was about
Ian,
to-
do the stuff, right?
No, I
It's
agreed to do
crafty.
the work.
Oh, yeah. Then
on
Ian's more intelligent.
organizing the contest. And I was like, yeah, we'll just, you know, this will be the contest. And then he's like, you should probably look up some, you know, the legal questions of contests. And in my head, I'm like, what legal questions? You send a poster to someone,
Right.
and that's it. And then I looked it
Because there's
up,
the gambling thing, sort
Yeah,
of.
there's
and
a ton.
fairness and.
and depending on what state and what country, like,
Mm-hmm.
you have to, like, post specific thing. Like, if you're in the U.S., you know, you have to post the bounds of, like, the deadline is important.
Right.
You have to list the specific prizes. You can't leave prizes in the dark. You know, there's things
Right.
like that.
Because in theory,
Um,
people are committing time to doing something.
right, and
that,
so-
you know.
It was, I was like, holy crap, this is actually a lot of information.
Right.
So I had to limit it to the U.S. because apparently every other country you have to go and check their laws about, you know, posting contests and raffles
Right.
and stuff. So
So just post and say you're from the U.S., and then when you give a non-U.S.
Yeah.
shipping address, it'll just be like, it'll be fine.
yeah, it'll be totally good.
I'm like
Yeah,
completely
yeah.
subverting the work that you
Yeah,
did
don't,
right now.
yeah, don't tell people that.
That actually reminds me, when we were in the Mega Booth, we were on the Mega Booth channel. Sony was cool enough back in 2012 to give us some Vitas to give away.
Mhm.
And like we were like, how do we give away these Vitas? And it was like, oh, you know what we could do? We could make it so that like if you go like every time you buy some merch at like at one of our booths or something
You
like
get a
that, you
raffle
get a
ticket.
raffle ticket and all and then all of a sudden someone was just like, hey guys, like that's not legal and stuff. And we were just like, huh?
Yeah,
You know,
because
it's
in our
like-
head it's
yeah,
like,
that
yeah,
sounds
just
like a good
give
idea.
away a Vita, right?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
it's
so
like,
yeah, these are things you have to worry about.
where are the rules posted?
Yeah.
What rules?
So was that your thing at the beginning when I was like asking a question? You were like, I have a thing. Was that your thing?
No. So the thing, sorry, I had another thing.
That's two things, man.
So the other thing that's coming with the Scapegoat 2 is we're releasing on PS4 really soon, and I'm really excited for that because our game is totally a console. Like, it
Yeah.
is meant to be played on a console
Yeah.
with a controller. So the thing I've been working
Yeah, so
on,
screw
and this is
you,
gonna
PC
look
gamers.
really. So I've been doing art, and this is the, oh god, what just happened there? So I'm doing art, including the loading screen for the PS4. Like, there's, anytime you go onto a new platform, you know, you post on Steam and they're like, we need banners for 7 different things and all that. And so the PS4 has a loading screen that you need, which we don't have on the PC. So this is the loading screen in progress. I think it looks pretty cool. And I'm drawing the goat in now. But one of those random, interesting design questions that, like, to me is a really interesting design question, is the loading screen is going to have the goat standing, or is the goat's about to enter the fortress, should he be in action or should he be standing? Because the loading screen is something you're going to see constantly, like you're going to see every time you load the game, and it might be there on like the store page as well. Should he be? I like the idea of him kind of contemplative and standing there, but I also think it could be really cool about him kind of leaping, down the rocks
right.
away from you. But right now he would be leaping away from the camera. And so
Big butt shot.
it's a really random like design question that we get to think about. Like that's what I spent the last like half hour
Well,
thinking
there
about.
are 15 people watching right now, so if they each vote, we have an odd number of people, and we can come to a decision.
Do you want the goat in action or standing contemplative? Yes, no, or well, that wasn't a yes/no question.
So I think that me personally, like normally, like like cutting in action and all that kind of stuff is really cool. Like when you look at comic books and stuff like that, right? Like you want at the very beginning or the very end of the action and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But in this case, because it's a loading screen and because it's kind of looking epic, because you've got him low, and you've got this big landscape beyond him. Like to me, it definitely feels like him standing there in this contemplative moment works. I think that jives with it because it's like
Cool. It's easier.
Solved.
Static pose, easier. All right, done. Ship it.
win.
All right. Do you have any other questions for me? Interview. The
Let me
five
see.
interview questions.
The other interview questions, I could look them up on my machine, but that seems boring.
That's-
I guess, what was your highest and lowest point involving a scapegoat 2?
Oh man.
When we came up with the idea, when we launched.
So there were kind of two low points, I guess, in developing. Why are goats tortured so much in gaming? I don't know. They're the devil's animal.
They're
right?
kind of
So,
like scapegoats.
Probably one of the lowest parts for me in the design. So we had like two major design challenges that I was involved with, which was the design of the goat himself, and so I had designed like 3 different like goat designs and really committed to doing a bunch of art and animation, and then I knew it didn't look what it the goat did not look good. It was fine, but it wasn't what it needed to be. And there's just that terrifying thing where you're like, it doesn't look as good as it should. Everything else is now starting to look really good. And then I don't want to do a week of work on something. Like, I already did a week of work. I did like several weeks of work designing that,
Right.
going through iterations of that goat.
Yeah.
So one of the low points, but also ultimately one of the high points, was when Ian, using his brother as kind of a shell in which he could criticize me, because he like took the game to his brother's place and his brother was playing it, and his brother was like, I like everything except the way the goat looks. And so Ian was like, so my brother likes everything except the goat. And I was like, I think you like everything except the goat.
You, sir.
And you're
Well
right.
played.
The
Yeah.
goat is not done. And so that was pretty low, because it was
Right.
but then I spent a week just working on it, and then I actually got to the goat we have
This
now.
would be awesome if we had actually prepared this in any way and we could show a before and after of the goat.
Nice. This is my sketchbook. I can show you probably the sketches of the goat.
Because I don't know if I know the earlier version of the
So
goat.
this is a pretty early version of the goat, and he looks much more goaty, and Ian's aesthetic was, he wanted more like metal, like heavy metal, like hardcore goat, and it was just like the goat is this small, like it's very hard to actually
Right.
make a serious goat, and like my artwork is more cartoony than that. This is more iterations that I was working on. So this was when I went into that redesign when the goat was looking shitty. This was like the first page, and then second page was this one where I really started to just realize that the power of the goat is in shapes. So,
Like its
was it-
silhouette.
yeah, and then just saying like, oh, the blocks are I really was embracing the idea of every block in the game being, individual. I didn't like the way they blended. That way you can build really interesting things. So then I just started like, doing the like classic, I don't know if you guys know animation at all, but the classic flour sack, idea of giving a flour sack life by like twisting and turning and squash and stretch and all that. And that was, yeah. So that really doesn't give you
Right.
like the crappy and good.
No,
part,
that's cool though.
Yeah.
That's-
So that was a low point. The other low point was probably when we were done with PAX last year. PAX was amazing, and then we were like, oh my god, people really like our game, but our game isn't done, and it has a lot of work to do. And suddenly Ian, who generally has followed a really interesting principle of, he's tried to make a business out of making games that he loves to make, is take it to 90% and then put the last 10% in your next game. Like you're always going to have more ideas.
Right.
And so suddenly he was at 90% and this was like, this is a game everyone's really enjoying. Maybe I should put another 5%. Guess what? That other 5% took us 6 more months.
Yeah.
And it was like the first, it was like 10 months to get to 90%
Yeah.
and 6 months to get to 95%.
It's funny because like that's
so.
like I feel like that was a strength of his in a way, and that like I would sit there when I was working on Virus Named Tom and be like, how did you make a game? Now he works on sequels and stuff too, but like I'm sitting there and I'm like, how do you crank out a game in a year, right?
Right.
Because it like takes me so long, and you're right, like a lot of that final polish takes like half of the time, right?
Yeah.
Just to make it that, and then the question is, does that translate? Like, is that like, and you're always like trying to do this equation in your brain, right? You're like,
Right.
if I make it that much better looking or feeling or whatever, is that what will push it over this hump, and all of a sudden it'll like take off, and without that it won't, because I'm putting it. It's kind of one of those. I've already put all this time and effort into it, so I'm totally screwed either way. So like, I might as well just push even harder, right? And you're right. Like, when do you stop?
Right. And I think that's the strength of, if we talk a lot about this as indies, like what's being successful, what's not hitting, and if you look at Steam top charts, a lot of systems-based games are at the top. The nice thing there is the polish is all like a system is like playing basketball, right? Like you're never going to, you only get better at it. You can play basketball over and over and over. If you play like a single player game, you play through it. The puzzle might get better, but you know the solution. Your brain did the hard work to solve an adventure game puzzle or something, or like a linear, like with the scapegoat.
Right.
And so the strength of, systems-based like DayZ or Spelunky or something like that is you can polish it like endlessly while people are playing it, and if they go play a later version, it'll still be fun. They won't, like, if they played an Escape Goat 2 puzzle and then played it like 3 months later, they wouldn't have that same like epiphany in that moment,
Right.
that excitement. And so
So you're just talking about like the kind of early access model.
yeah,
And how
and
that might
that
not work
I
well
think
for a puzzle game.
and that I think that the early access model really pays off with that 90% to 95%, because you can say, is this being successful or is this not being successful?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Like,
Right.
like you can get it out at 80% and
Right.
see if people are into it.
Yeah.
If we released an early access version of Escape Goat 2 at 80%, you'd have a lot of people who would be like, it's all right. And then when it got to 100%, they would have no reason to play it again.
Right.
You play DayZ at 80%, and then you play it at 100%.
It might not have worked perfectly, but what I did for Virus Named Tom, anyways, is that when I put it out, when I gave early access to the beta,
Yeah.
this is before Steam early access, Yeah, I gave the first. I think I gave the first 2 areas,
Yeah.
and then each time I updated the game, I included an additional area.
Yeah.
So that it would give people a reason to come back and play it.
Yeah.
That's tough to do because then you're like rejiggering things and stuff like that. But it also gave me, it also let me put off some of the later like really hard puzzle levels and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Till I kind of
Right.
because you get better at making puzzles. Like the last puzzle you make, like you're just like you got it down, and then you look back at some of the earlier ones and you're like, oh god, do I go replace all them? But yeah, so that's an area where it might work. I mean, this is
Yeah.
a debate I've had with other indies. Like,
Yeah.
early access, is it good for this type of game? Is it bad for this type of game? Like,
Right.
that kind of thing.
Well, and it's like I'm working on story for. I'm also working on one of those iPhone games that hopefully you all will play.
Nod your
unlike-
heads. Nod your heads, everybody.
Nod your heads. And I'm adding story elements into a systems-based game. So the idea is you will unlock story as you play through it. And part of me is like, should I maybe not be giving that story to my testers?
Right.
Like until, should I not iterate on the story, or should I iterate on the story? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, that's a tough
Um,
one. I have the
so-
exact same issue with Duskers, right? Like,
Yeah.
do you expose that? I mean, I feel in a way that I would, simply because, like, just like every
You
other
wanna get
element of the game,
feedback.
I want feedback.
Yeah.
I want people to be like, boring story, I skipped through them all, you know what I mean? And then I'm like, well, I either need to get rid of it or I need to make it much better, right?
Right.
So I would want to do that, but you're right in the sense that for those that come along the journey with me, it would be cool to have that like moment where it's like, oh, now I'm releasing the final chapter,
Right.
which I think I would probably do. But I equate this kind of like, it's kind of like when I worked on, movies at DreamWorks. It's like when you worked on a movie, sometimes you'd be a little bit sad when you went on to a movie that you were super excited about, right? Because you'd be like, well, now I'm gonna know the story and everything like that. But I think this is the same reason people do early access, right? It's like they're making a trade, right? In theory, the trade is that like when I was making those movies, it's like, okay, now I'm not gonna get to go to the theater on opening day and have this complete experience for like an hour and a half or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
But the trade-off is that over months and years, I get to watch this thing evolve, and I get way more out of it. But I don't. But it's in bits and pieces, and it's not like this,
Yeah.
cumulative kind of thing, this epiphany moment, right? So it's like that's kind of the trade-off. So I think that's what it would be. I don't know.
So that kind of, that's one of the debates that I think we all have kind of constantly is how should we be giving our content to you
Yes.
as consumers?
You.
And, we always welcome feedback. So feel free to tweet at us or something.
Yeah.
If you guys have any other questions, please, other than why are goats tortured so much?
Right.
Because, I don't know.
We don't know the mysteries of that.
Goat Hill Pizza.
Goat Hill Pizza.
Uh,
That's our sponsor.
that is our sponsor.
We'll now ask them for a free slice next time we go there.
Yeah.
Be like, you didn't see on the Twitch channel that we advertised your pizza to a bunch of people that don't live anywhere near it?
Oh, I would say we should get some beer sponsors, but I don't like beer, so you just gave me a look and I saw it on that. I saw it on the
judging.
camera.
You saw my
You were
judge.
judging me,
Yeah.
and you thought I wouldn't see, but I did
We
see.
talk about going to
Um,
Ireland and stuff like that, and
Dude, in Ireland, people drink cider. Cider. If you drink cider, there's like a third of a chance at a bar in Ireland that you'll see someone with cider. It's like on tap, and also it's
I like to
growing
mix
here
the
in the
two.
U.S. I'm very glad with the growth of cider here.
I like to mix the two.
I watched in
Black Velvet or Snakebite, depending on where you go, where you do like cider and
Yeah.
Guinness.
I've noticed on Hulu in the last month two unique cider companies throwing their commercials at us, and I'm like,
We saw
cider
an
is
ad.
having its day in the
Yeah,
U.S.
we saw an ad.
So,
like a
there's a
billboard.
big billboard like right next to Double Fine.
It's happening.
Most important piece of feedback you've got as devs.
Most important piece of feedback.
That's
Feedback
in the-
on our games. I guess.
or on how we're living our lives.
It's probably Tim. Don't put your finger in that socket if it's a life thing, but if it's a dev thing, got as developers. So most important point of feedback.
It's a lot of cumulative, like don't do this, and I don't know.
I think, yeah, it's kind of cumulative. I think the feedback that I'm trying to gauge this in my brain,
think-
and it's probably anything that I want to say.
I think
but-
for me, it's getting feedback, and it's
Feedback is
honestly,
feedback.
yeah. Well, it's hearing dress code issues. Are we having problems with our dress code? I don't know.
Is there
I want your
malfunction?
shirt, by the way. One day I'm gonna steal that shirt from you,
This is pretty cool.
off your back.
Yeah, I like it. This is
But
Megamind from Megamind.
but yeah, like probably the most important thing that I've realized and come to appreciate is how important getting any feedback is, and just putting your games, putting your art, putting anything you have in front of others, and being willing to listen and accepting what people say. Like, it's really, I think a lot of people are scared of that, and a lot of people feel like I don't need feedback, I know what I want, and it's like, you do, but when you get feedback, you get whatever that person is seeing too, and so I feel like it's really valuable, because you can say, this is how I think it should be perceived, and that's how they're perceiving it.
Right.
So getting feedback at all.
Right.
So
I'm gonna take the next one. How much do you hate making tutorials? Because I hate all of it. I do hate making tutorials, and what's kind of killing me a little bit is that in Duskers right now, like there's a very, very tutorial-y tutorial, and the reason why is because it's got roguelike mechanics, so it's like you're in this loop, and I want the tutorial to be outside of that loop, so that I can just be like, FTL did this and some roguelikes do this, so that it's just like, okay, here's kind of a chunk of how to play. Now get in the game loop and die and restart and die and restart and die and restart. And I don't want to. You could do the same exact thing by just teaching them through, and then after their first death, making it so that part doesn't happen again. But I feel like calling it out just so that it's it is what it is. And I'm going to try to make it maybe more interesting and more compelling and stuff like that. But I think the hardest part about that is that everyone's always talking about don't do tutorials. You watch Indie Game the movie, and what what Tommy and Edmund did with Super Meat Boy, where they're like, let's force them to jump over this, and so you've got to hit right, and you got to hold the button down to jump, and you want it to be intrinsic in the game. We've also, hopefully a lot of you have seen that Mega Man one by what is his name?
Raptor?
Ego Raptor. That's showing how you can just infer, you can show instead of telling. So it's it's a tough thing, because I don't know. Sometimes I remember back in the day, reading reading an instruction manual and being like, okay, I get it, and then playing the game, instead of this thinly veiled thing where you're your first mission is you have amnesia and you've got to relearn how to do everything. Quick, there's a guy, pick up the gun and shoot them, and the guy's moving incredibly slowly. It's it exposes itself as a tutorial, whereas I feel like back in the day they were just here it is, So it's
Right.
I think there's
But you also read there was also that distinct thing, you read the manual.
Right.
Right.
Well, you were also riding in the car on the way home, and you're unwrapping, and you can't play it yet, and so you're let me read the instruction booklet.
Right.
Which Alex is always saying I should make an instruction booklet. But so yeah, that's the tough thing is that I feel like everyone always thinks there's one way to do it, where it's the perfectly clean, not intrusive at all.
Yeah.
And I mean, and then I played Crusader Kings 2, and it didn't do a good job at all of telling me how to play the game, and I used Let's Plays and stuff to teach myself.
Right.
And I don't think that that's good,
Early-
but I did it, and
yeah.
it was I still had a ton of fun with the game. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, the answer is we hate doing it, but it's valuable.
Right.
It has a purpose.
Yeah.
I didn't
yeah, I hate doing it, and then I hate everyone complaining
iterating
about
on
the thing I
it.
had to do. Right?
Oh,
It was
yeah.
the boring
Well,
tutorial. It's yeah.
So I made a one of my iPhone games is called Dead End. It's called Dead End HD because apparently. So okay, very small tangent here. If you name a game Dead End HD, someone else can name an iPhone game Dead End. So like I had called my game Dead End, and it came out, and I was like proud of it. Blah blah blah. It was out, and then. I later like did a universal update. I had it, for Retina iPad. Like I did all these things, and I was like, awesome. You know what? I'm gonna like bump up the price from $1 to $2 and call it Dead End HD. 6 months ago, I look on Touch Arcade, and they're like, this new game came out called Dead End. Looks pretty cool, and I was like, what? So, it's not my game. So Dead End HD is mine, and you should check it out. But when I first released it, it's a one-button game, and so I was like, people can learn that, right? And then, no, it's still, I ended up making a tutorial, and I had to do stuff with that tutorial. Like, I had to lock sections of the screen that are normally useful. Like, you can press anywhere on the left side of the screen or the right side of the screen to turn that direction, but people would do stuff that not do the right stuff, so I had to lock. You have to press this little button over here to turn.
And that's an amazing thing. Like, there's
like,
one part you see it all the time, so you don't infer how people could mess it up, and then there's the other part, like, you are catering to the lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
Like,
the tutorial is
someone's not going to get it, so you got to explain it, right?
And I think it came out to a useful tutorial, and I wish I had launched with it. But yeah, I think as a designer, for people that aren't in the industry or whatever, because it looks like we have some industry people.
I was just reading. I wasn't even looking. So Supreme Commander, very cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
I guess we are on the Indie Mega booth, so there are going to be other devs maybe.
Well,
I always think when I'm talking.
This person also did say they hated making tutorials, so that I figured they were probably a developer too. But I think the other thing is that when you're building a game, you're building all the tools for the loop of the game. Like, these are the things that are active. When you make a tutorial, like, you have to put in code that is now running the entire time your game is running, or you have to figure out how to avoid doing that. Like, you have to do all these little things. So
yeah,
like,
it's all special cases.
It's all special cases, and doing things like tutorials are like, you have to write specific code for a very specific thing, and you're like, no, I want everything to work.
I just did that. Like, even though the game is so early, and Duskers, the first mission that you go on after the tutorial, even outside the tutorial, like, there's a docking bay on the schematic, and then we sometimes scan a random room so that you kind of see, like, oh my god, there's a drone there and some rations, like, I want to get there. It just gives you a little target, right? And that confused someone, because they were like, wait, where are my drones? Because they saw the big room in the middle, and they're like, and there was a drone in there, and they're like, oh, that's where I start. So now I just wrote like a little thing that, like, if it's the first game after the tutorial, like, don't, like, make sure that the room scan fails,
Special
like
cases. The whole, I think that's what it is. I hate making special cases, but ultimately, I'm glad when I do it, when I put the time in for those things, because,
Cool. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your day. We have probably,
All right.
It's probably been 40 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
So
I should go back to drawing the static goat standing there looking contemplative.
That's what we've all decided,
fortress.
I believe.
Yeah. Well, no one told us.
They were.
No
I think
one
it
gave
was
us
a
an
weighty
opinion.
decision. They think they were intimidated.
No one gave us an opinion.
Yeah.
I'm kind of upset.
Yeah.
But
they can kind of.
Escapegoat2.com/contest. Design levels. When Tim Schafer signed stuff, along with I actually agreed to do a drawing as one, or like a drawing for people as one of the prizes. So I hope that doesn't take me a lot of time, but we'll see. I'm committed. Anyway, thanks everyone.
Cool, man. Thanks for coming on board. Okay, guys. So I'm probably going to now maybe play a little bit of Duskers. Maybe I'll play
RandyO.net.
RandyO.net and Randy0 on Twitter. And I'm sure he's on the Facebook, so just friend him. He will definitely friend you back.
What?